Namaste. Welcome back to Sipping on Stories podcast. Today is a special episode because for the first time on Sipping on Stories, I have the honor of welcoming a male guest to the show. And what a guest to start with. Joining me is Sorav Malhotra, a visionary thinker, a strategist, and a storyteller whose work bridges the realms of spirituality and sustainability. His journey has led him to explore Vedic wisdom, Sanathan Dharm, and the role of deities and the balance of Shiva and Shakti. So, in these conversations, we will deep dive into these topics and explore how ancient knowledge can guide us in this modern world. Saurav's insights will inspire you to rethink how we integrate spirituality into our daily lives and even our approach to sustainability. So, let's get started. Namaste, Saurav. Welcome to Sipping on Stories podcast. I am so grateful to
Namaste.
have you here. Yeah, you are a star guest because you're the first male guest on this show. So I'm very excited for Sipping on Stories.
Mm.
Um, yeah, um,
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored and that you thought of me and are connect with her through her preet. So I'm very grateful to be here.
yeah, awesome. So first of all, Saurav, tell us where you're joining us from and also the choice of beverage you've got with you.
Beautiful. So I am joining in from Toronto, and my choice of beverage is an hot mocha made at home. So nice coffee and some cacao with oat milk.
Awesome. I love it. All right, great. And tell us one thing that you love about the place you're in.
So seasons. Um, I get fascinated by the different seasons. So from spring to summer, fall, and then winter. Growing up in the Middle East, we never really had the different seasons. It was always summer
Mm.
and not summer. This is a nice change of pace, especially to see the colors of the leaves changing and the smell of the air also changes when the seasons change, which I really, really enjoy. It's a nice, refreshing and grounding experience.
Oh, wow, that's so beautiful. While you were describing it, I just felt like I was there and I just got back. It's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much, Saurabh, again, for your time. I thought we will just get into your personal journey of where it all began and some insights. So if you can maybe take us through of how did your journey began into understanding Vedic knowledge and how you got into it and and how it has shaped your work in spirituality and sustainability. So if someone is new to these concepts and where would you also recommend they start their journey? Maybe we get through your experience first and maybe you can take us slowly to that path. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Very good question there. Um, I grew up in a family which is a Hindu household. Um, However, even though my parents and my family or surrounded family members have always been very spiritual, on some occasion also very focused on traditions and religion or religious ceremonies. I never felt that connect in my teenage years or as an early adult. Um, there were moments where I was at probably an atheist and then kind of became an agnostic. Um, and going through my early adulthood days, I did partake in many spiritual meditations, got certified in Reiki levels 1 and 2 as a late teenager, just before I got into my college and then full-time work. But I still never really made that connect into following Sanathan Dharm and looking into the different Vedic scriptures. Um, it was only, I would say, 3.5 years ago when I had moved to Canada and I met with a good friend of mine. Well, we're good friends now online, and he kind of opened that Pandora's box into the world of Vedic scriptures,
Mm.
Vedanta philosophies, and of course Sanatana Dharma, but from a very spiritual, philosophical standpoint.
Mm.
And it was my journey of learnings through her where I kind of got reconnected into my own culture. in a way.
Mm,
And now, I mean, with all the courses I've done over the past 3 years, and of course with that reignited passion, I find myself studying more and more and getting more and more connected
mm,
to the Vedanta realm, and how each deity plays a certain role in our lives at certain different stages in our life. Um, how certain chants have a different impact,
mm,
a different shift in our mindset or our emotions.
mm,
How certain types of foods help us and ground ourselves and work well when the seasons change. This has all been a journey of revelations,
mhm.
or peeling back the layers of an onion, I would say, in the past 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. Oh my, it has been an interesting journey for you, and I also know that you're very passionate about sustainability. So how do you kind of intertwine, and kind of apply your Vedic wisdom into sustainability? So how did you get into that, and how do you kind of, blend these two together?
Yeah, a very good question. So sustainability has always been a passion of mine. Before starting college over 10 years ago, and it has taken me down a different route. I mean, I have partaken in various forms of advocacy, especially in the past 4 years. But my spiritual journey, specifically, diving into the world of Vedic knowledge or Vedic wisdom, has allowed me to take a different approach. And it is not just Vedic knowledge. I strongly believe that you know we live in such a technological age where we can use modern day tools and technologies to develop clean energy solutions. But at
Mm,
the same time, it's very important to pay respect or to honor the indigenous ways of life, whether a person is in Australia, North America, or India. So going
mm,
back to the Vedic way of life, honoring the ways that they survived and thrived
mm,
for many thousands of years. And I think when we want to merge or combine sustainable ways of life, I think it goes down to not just, what we see in our day to day, but how we are and how we show up, right? So
mm,
if you look at today's day and age, everyone is so caught up, in instant gratification, and, our minds are all over the place. So I think it's really about honing that and coming back to in our space and being more grounded and more intentional.
yeah.
Because if we are more grounded, intentional, and focused, most of the times you would actually find the solution to our problem right in front of us. But
Mm,
because we are so panned out and all over the place, we end up complicating things which may necessarily not need to be complicated, but be simple enough for a solution.
yeah.
So I think that goes in from an individual perspective and how you kind of, find solutions to day-to-day challenges, or, you know, looking at sustainable solutions.
Yeah.
Um, so from a technical aspect, I mean, if you look at the indigenous ways of life, uh, whether it's the Vedic culture, or, American or the native Aboriginal culture, in Australia, they our ancestors would live with nature,
Yeah.
right? They used to work with, what they had, and work in synergy with the environment, right? In today's day and age, if you go down a city, a modern day city, everything is concrete and it's all very squared with hard angles, right? There's a lack of flow. It almost feels like a prison in some way or the other, right? And I
Mm,
think one of the biggest things that we can do is we can go back and see how, our ancestors lived and work towards incorporating that. And this is not calling out to a full radical change, no, but it's about how we can slowly become more conscious, and, how we build, construct
mm,
buildings or mega structures, and how we can work with the environment, or work with the with nature instead of, you know, cutting down everything and building the same, you know, structures all across.
Yeah.
Um, that's one way. Looking Going further into, how we preserve the biodiversity of a native area instead of completely, you know, clearing all the species of the biodiversity, we can try and be more inclusive. And
Mm,
often you see in certain places in India and even over here in Canada, you see certain wildlife coming into the backyards.
mm,
In India, you'll hear cases or stories of, you know, cheetahs or some tigers that have come
yeah.
into certain villages or certain metropolitan areas. And we often blame the animal, right? That, oh, this pest has come into our backyard, not realizing that we have actually occupied that space
Yeah.
and we haven't given them much space. And the more we expand as a society, we further encroach their territory, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where we have to find balance and see, how ancient civilizations worked within a balance,
Mm,
within uh within a spectrum, ensuring that everyone has their space instead of, just going on and on encroaching.
yeah.
So that's another way of looking at it, from, very a Vedic standpoint,
Mm,
working with nature and harmony.
mm,
Um, I also feel that, as a society, we have this misguided, uh, and I think not for anyone to be blamed. I think it's just how we consume so much of media, and there's a certain type of conditioning that's thrown at us.
yeah.
And I
Agree.
think that's where that break has to happen
Mm,
because it goes back to how, we are what we see,
yeah.
right? So if inside we have a lot of chaos, you're going to just have that all across. And I know chaos to a certain extent is good because that's how you create new ideas. But if it's just constantly in overdrive and we, are thrown with, consumerism, instant gratification, over sexualization of everything
Mm,
24/7, 365 days, then our mind, our emotions go
mm,
in that trajectory.
yeah.
Um, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a very beautiful way that you put it as well. I mean, the way you combine your Vedic wisdom into sustainability and your passion kind of shows up. So, thank you for kind of taking us through that. And you also mentioned Sanathan Dharm as we were talking about Vedic wisdom, Saurav. So, in your terminology, so how do you define what is Sanathan Dharm, beyond the religious interpretations? Because we do have a lot of audiences who may not be familiar with Hinduism or even Sanathan Dharm, but maybe interested, maybe have sparked an interest. So if you can maybe put it in your words what Sanathan Dharm means to you, beyond the religious interpretations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great question. And you rightfully said a lot of people will associate it with Hinduism, and um, this is a misconception that I mean has been there for many years, and I too was a victim of that space, but I didn't know much about it.
Mm,
But the word Hindu came much later on. So when, if you look at ancient India or ancient Bharat, Hindu was always the terminology used for folks for that area. So let's say when we had traders, with ancient Persian Empire or with the ancient Arabs or the Bedouin tribes in the Middle East, and they would go to India
mhm,
when they would trade in particularly the areas near River Sindh, which is now extinct, they would say Hind,
mhm.
because even in Arabic, Hind is associated with India.
Right.
So we would be called Hindu because we were the people of that area,
Mhm,
specifically near the River Sindh. And so Hindu was always a word to donate or well, sorry, I'm gonna say that.
all
Hindu
good.
was always Hindu is always the word for people of that area rather than a religion. Sanatan Dharm, it comes into play where, I mean, of course, we had many people who came to India, and I think that definitely had an influence into how we see today as Hinduism as a religion.
Mhm.
But Sanatana Dharma, which is the core principle, that was always a way of life,
Yeah.
looking at the universal laws. And that's how we kind of broke it down into the different types of Vedas, the four Vedas, the Vedanta philosophies, and how different, scriptures came out of it, right? So you've got the
Mm.
Bhagavad Gita, you've got the Ramayana, uh, you've got the Shiv Purans, which is something that I'm only recently getting more, more into, or I would say further studying. And
Yeah.
these are all different branches that have come out of the same system, but it
Mm.
was always a way of life.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if you were to go back to what I was saying about, how we behave and, you know, each day to day with ourselves, with our
Mm.
surroundings, we need a system, right? And I think that's the system that is now a religion. Not
Mm.
an organized religion, but it
Yeah.
is a religion for close to 1 billion people
Yeah.
or more.
Mm. Yeah. And it's very interesting, isn't it? Just wanted to add because every time, so, sharing a little personal story about me is I was born into a Muslim family. However, I always got drawn to the deities, like other deities like Hanuman, and I used to read about Ramayana and Mahabharata. I found it quite fascinating. And So as I was growing up, and now kind of, we follow Shiva. So Lord Shiva is something that we follow, worship, and so on. But I found that when people ask me, like, are you religious? Are you a Hindu? Are you religious? And I said, I wouldn't say that I'm religious. I would say that this is way of life for me. And that's what it is. And I think, as you said, that Sanathan Dharm very well, that is a way of life. It's how you connect, your spirituality into the way you live. You just kind of
Mm,
integrate it so well into your life that every action, every thought is kind of operated on that. And for
mm,
many people, I feel like there's a misconception also about spirituality because people think that if you're a spiritual person, you need to be calm, you need to be composed, you cannot get angry, you cannot have angry thoughts, you need to be seen in, these orange clothes. So I feel like there is like this misconception. I believe that, spirituality comes in everything, like the way you interact in your household with your parents, with your partner, with your siblings, and anyone, even your pets. It needs to be like, you need to be self-aware, you need to be humble, have humility, and how you are as a person, that's where it begins. I'm not sure where you stand on that, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I couldn't agree with you more. Um, and I mean, as you mentioned that, like, I got chills because that is uh, something that I've been talking to my parents quite a bit about. Um, and I mean, and I think that's, I mean, you know, I think the beauty of, you know, focusing on, you know, the conscious or the intentional way of living.
Mm.
And I think how Sanatana Dharma kind of falls into that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so something that I said to my mom in particular a few weeks ago is that with every step, for example, I take, whether it's action, inaction, there is, it's divine, right?
Mm.
Because, for example, we are only here for a certain amount of time, right? And we go back to, whatever the beliefs are,
Mm.
some people believe that we don't have reincarnation. Some people feel that there is reincarnations, excuse me, based on karma and so on and so forth. But we're here only for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I think focusing on, this mindset of being intentional and looking at everything, every experience, every emotion, like you rightfully said, as part of a
Mm.
journey which is bringing everyone one step closer where they're meant to be,
Yeah.
right? Um, And I think that itself summarizes it so beautifully, that it's this
Mm.
experience of constant learning, growth, and moving one step closer to
Yeah.
our destination. And
Mm.
for me, it's a divine experience, right? And I think that's why, um, you know, in our world, we have so many different perceptions, so many different opinions,
Mm.
and everything just functions. It's
Mm.
like a play, right?
Yeah.
Almost that,
Mm.
we just go through life like people can agree to disagree. We can have, people of different races, cultures, religions, and yet this world runs, right? There's
Yeah.
something so profound in that. And if you see it from a different perspective, this creator, whoever that may be, like what an a genius idea, right? To just let everyone just do what they want. There is destiny, there is a little bit of free will, but
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I digressed. I just kind of, go on that path, and it's a,
Yeah. No, I think it's
a
good. And
ramble.
yeah, sometimes I feel like divine just is expressing, itself through us, and just having a good laugh maybe, and looking at us, and the kind of humans are going around and doing things and creating chaos, and yeah, it's hilarious when I think about it. But I think from there, I would maybe take us through and talk about the role of deities in human lives, Saurabh. So, from your personal experience, maybe I'm happy, for you to share your experiences, your thoughts. So, are deities, are these, so who are the deities? Are they like these external divine forces, archetypes or aspects of our own consciousness? So, how would you kind of, define them? And maybe also tell us, who's your favorite deity and who you feel like connecting to more?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, very, very good question. And so deities, in very simple terms, they are manifestations or physical manifestations of the divine.
Mm,
Um, we live in a world of illusion, Maya, where things are physical to a certain extent. Um, and so one of the key reasons as to why we have deities or, for example, idols in India is to help us connect with that particular formless, incomprehensible being. Um, whether it's, in certain parts of India like Maharashtra, Ganesh or Sai Baba, or Hanuman, or if you go towards Delhi, you've got different types of gurus or different types of deities.
mm,
Is really a stepping stone. It's
yeah.
always been about using that space to evolve. So, for example, when we do any kind of prayers or chanting or meditations, for example, if we do particular yogic sadhanas, they would normally call upon Adi Yogi, who is also known as Shiva.
Yeah.
Um, and we have a deity of him, or like a particular form of him, but then you also have a Shivaling, which is another form of him, but the
Mm,
energy is the same, right? And the essence is of just connecting to this beautiful, you know, experience,
yeah.
which there's no way to describe that energy. So
Mm,
deities play an important role, and the big role, I mean, just circling back, is to help humans connect with that divine space,
mm,
and for different reasons, right? So, Hanuman is for strength and determination and devotion. Ganesh is for removing obstacles. Krishna is to learn how to be playful and strategic, in day-to-day life.
mm,
Um, we learn about, for example, Kali or Kali Ma, who symbolizes chaos, but clearing energy and creating. So use that to, bring in new ideas,
mm,
clear the old energy. Shiva, as we said, it's about, going into that space of yoke or yoking, right? Finding that union of mind, body, and soul,
mm,
and moving through a different space of life. So
mm,
that, I mean, for me, that's what deities do. They help us um, connect with this formless being and move through our life,
Yeah.
in a very intentional and conscious manner.
Mm.
And to answer your question, my favorite, the deities that I get called to, I mean, it does change quite often. Uh, but I have been working a lot with Shiva and Shakti, and looking at a manifestation of Shiva, who is also known as Kal Bhairav. Um, I'm not sure if you've heard or worked with Kal Bhairav before, but
Yeah.
he's the Lord of Time, Kal,
Yeah.
and he is considered to be the most fierce form of Shiva,
Mm.
and he's a protector. So, for example, for anyone to connect or to work with Shakti's energy, and for
Mm.
anyone, listening to the Shakti is the feminine, the primordial feminine force that is all around us in the form of Maya. To connect directly with her, one has to go through Kal Bhairav. You have to work with Kal Bhairav to get to Shakti. So, for example, if you visit any of the Shakti Peeths in
Mm.
India, Bangladesh, and some in Pakistan, like Vaishno Devi, for example, or Ma Kamakhya,
Mm.
you would find that Kal Bhairav idol or like a small temple of his is there as a protector for Shakti.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful experience. So
Yeah. It's very
long story short, it's Shiva and
yeah.
Kal Bhairav.
Yeah, amazing. I think in a way that's how I feel like we connected also, Saurav, because I started my spiritual journey with Kal Bhairav sadhana to begin with.
Okay,
So with the help of my guru, of course, and that kind of also got me connected to other deities that we work with, the divine feminine, with Durga Ma, and then
beautiful.
we connect. Then I connected with Hanumanji, and I feel very, drawn to him in a lot of times.
Mm,
So I feel like he's like always there, and I enjoy, chanting Hanuman Chalisa, and so this is my has been my current work at this point. I connect with him
beautiful.
every day, and I find like a sense of, strength when I do connect with him. So it's very interesting. And I'm also reading this very interesting book called Hanumat Vadavalana. It's like based on the stotram of Hanumanji, and
Yeah,
it just talks about, his role that he played in Ramayana and his devotion, and how
yeah,
we as humans can, cultivate that
good.
as well. So I think it's a
Yeah,
beautiful book. I've got it right here in my thing, but
nice.
I would recommend everyone read it. I think it's a very
Oh
interesting.
yeah,
So and I so resonated and connected with whatever you said. I feel like that's how our journey has been. Like my journey has been to, to connect to Shakti. You have to get through Kal Bhairav, and it so happened, and that's when I realized that that's interesting.
it is, and it also shifts the perspective on how we define masculine and feminine energies, um and how I mean how in there how interconnected the two energies are.
Yeah.
Like one can't exist without the other. That there has to be a hand in hand, but you have to work through both those energies to find that balance.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
and
Saurabh, did
I
you
have
have?
to say,
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
You go
No,
ahead.
I have to say that this year's Hanuman's year. So it's interesting that you mentioned that I've been working with Hanuman, and
Yeah.
he is also a manifestation of Shiva. Uh,
Interesting. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the clear energy, the yogi all across.
Yeah. So interesting, isn't it? I find this so beautiful. Like really, and I would maybe ask you to maybe share, Saurabh, if you had any personal experience when you did connect with these energies, because in a way, you're not the same person anymore. So if you when you just start
More.
connecting with these energies and working with them, you have a
Excuse
different perspective and a different way of looking
me.
at
Yeah.
life altogether. So if you want to share any personal experiences that
Yeah.
you've gone through when you maybe started connecting to these deities. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a good question there. Very good question. Um, I would say the past year and a half has been, you know, an experience. I've gone through some personal changes in my life with work, with relationships. Um, and I mean, I lost a very close family member last year in June, and it's been an interesting journey. And I think, you know, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think they say that when you go through a certain period of grief, I think that brings you closer to another realization, and brings you closer to this divine experience uh,
Mm,
that we have. And I think the biggest switch, or uh, I would say, shake up for me was last year in in July,
mm,
when one of our family members passed away, and we had to you know organize her last rites. And we thought, what do we do, right? Because as per uh, my culture growing up, anyone who passes, we cremate their body and spread their ashes, uh,
mm,
maybe to a place that that they really liked, or to Ganga or the Ganges River. And we decided to go to Kashi, which is also known as Banaras or Varanasi. And this city is the city for Bhairav. That's his, like, he's the Kotakal, or the guardian of Kashi. And they actually say that Kashi, or Varanasi, sits on the tip of Shivji's Trishul, so that, when the entire world moves ahead, or goes through a change, Kashi will remain as is. And
mm,
it's historically one of the oldest inhabited cities on this planet,
mm,
over 5,000 years old. And so that was you know the most random, and I would say the most one of the quickest trips that we organized. We were in Kashi for about 3.5 days.
mhm,
And after spreading the ashes of our family member, um, we went to so many temples. And I think that experience changed my parents and myself, because
mm.
we had never done something like this.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you'd go to like a temple here and there, but this was like one temple after the other, going for one chanting or meditation experience, one after the other. And it is said that when you go to Varanasi, you have to visit two temples. One
Mm,
is the Bhairav temple, because he is the guardian of the place, and you visit the Kashi Vishwanath temple, which is the Shiva's temple. Um, and we were able to do both. And then
mhm,
we also saw a few Devi mandirs,
yeah.
Durga Ma's mandir. There's a beautiful Hanuman temple. So we had the chance of going to a Hanuman temple. And there was the experiences, it's different. It's something that I've not experienced elsewhere. And I've been to a lot of temples within Toronto, New Jersey, and New York, and
Mm,
in Dubai as well. But it was something else. And when you go to that city, it's a chaotic city, right? People are coming from all different angles. People are honking,
mm,
but it's interesting because that kind of shows you how the universe works, right? There's chaos and there's creation through chaos.
yeah.
Um, and that itself it's something else. And 6 months later, I was in Kashi in January this year, and I had, the opportunity to go to the Mahakumbh, which happened after 144 years in Prayagraj. Um, so I went through Kashi for that. So there's something about the place. It's called me back twice in 6 months, and I don't think I'm done yet. I think there are more trips to go there for,
Yeah.
and just kind of just meditate and
Mm.
uh just absorb all the experiences and the energies.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. And is that when your experience with Kal Bhairav kind of started? Is that when you started connecting with that energy more?
It was a few months into the connection. So I had been chanting a few Kal Bhairav mantras. I had been working with some Shivji mantras, and I had been connecting a lot with some of the Shakti Srotams prior to that. And what was very interesting is once I had gone to Kashi last July, I
Hmm.
had done a few Vedic Patri readings or Vedic astrology chart readings.
Right.
Um, and in one of my readings, I was told that in my last life, I actually worked with Bhairav, Kal Bhairav, quite a bit. So it was a natural reconnect of
Mm.
sorts. And I felt that which was fitting, right? Because I had not told this person that, I visited Kashi and I was working with Bhairav's energies.
Mm.
So it was very fitting when they kind of, said that you have been working with him, continue working with him.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think the soul kind of just starts where you left it. So you never like
Yeah,
started from zero, which is quite interesting. And I've realized that with my experiences as well. So I think that's fascinating. And there is, when you connect to certain energies, with especially Kal Bhairav, because it's so fierce and it will it'll probably cause a lot of chaos in your own life to begin with, because it is just kind of is clearing things off, which is in
yeah,
your path to get where you need to be. So it is happening very quickly, because in my experience, because I've heard a lot of people also shy away from connecting with this energy because it's so fierce and they are not ready for it yet. And when I started, I had no idea. When my guru gave me this mantra, they were like, we start chanting this, and it started. And I used to be very, because I want to connect back to, Shiva and Shakti in a way that, how this kind of dynamic teaches about balancing spirituality and material world. So with that, I wanted to kind of highlight and of course get your kind of insight on it, is that when I started it, I was used to be very ambitious about my career. I was like, I had lots of dreams and ambition about where I needed to be in my life. And when I started the Kalbhairav sadhana, everything just went away, because I straight away, because that was so dear to me, and I lost my job at that point. I
sorry
was
to
made
hear that. Yeah,
redundant.
yeah.
So I was, in a way, I was very happy. I was celebrated that moment. However,
Okay. Yeah,
however, I was, and maybe intuitively I know it was coming, but then I was jobless for about 4 or 5 months, and I was trying to find out what I actually want to do. And that's when the podcast kind of took birth in that time, because they wanted me to just, kind of remove that kind of layer where that ambition was so important to me in my life. So I was not meant for that. I was meant for something else. I feel
yeah,
like they always bring this like earthquake in your life before things get normal. So I wanted to like, share that experience with my listeners also, because sometimes personal experiences and insights,
yeah,
really help someone if they feel like, oh my God, what's happening. But I also want to say that if you get an opportunity to connect with that energy, please do,
yeah.
because there's going to be like, beautiful light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm not sure if that is your experience also, or if you have anything to add to it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that. That was, yeah, and you were very right to say that uh, when you connect with some of their energies, it does bring about chaos and change. And I think as we grow up, we are conditioned to fear change.
Mm,
In our school, in our day to day with our families, and I think that's where there has to be a mindset shift. I think because change is the only thing that's constant, right? Everything changes, and we can't. So certain things that we can't control, we can only adapt
yeah.
uh, and grow from those experiences. Um, and I mean, everyone struggles. I mean, I struggle on a day-to-day basis with this concept of change and chaos, and getting rid of the old or destroying the old for something new to come into
Mm,
existence. Um, I think one thing I'd like to add to what you had said specifically is um, everything is spiritual,
mm,
whether it's the material life or the spiritual sadhanas we do, everything is spiritual. Um, it's this existence of ours is a spiritual existence because we are living we're living in this form of Maya, right?
mm,
And that would not be possible if it wasn't for the union of Shiva and Shakti's energies.
yeah.
That union itself is a spiritual experience. So whether we are talking now or whether we get back to our day-to-day work or any kind of projects, that's a spiritual experience. And I think it's about connecting that what we do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's our work, taking care of people, families, so on and so forth.
Mm,
If we go back to that essence uh, and keep in mind that this is our dharmic way or our dharm,
mm,
right? Excuse me, our purpose.
yeah.
I think that helps in some way to kind of move through an experience. So,
Yep.
for example, I lost my job, or I was I was fired from a job about 2 years ago in November 2023. Um, and it wasn't something that I had expected. It happened
Mm,
out of the blue, and October and November 2023 were difficult periods for me. I was going through something personal, separate, and then this kind of was a cherry
mm,
on top. But I mean, at that time, I cried, I screamed, I sweat, I cursed the universe, everything possible. Uh, but looking back at that experience today,
mm,
um, there are a lot of changes in my thought processes, in my perceptions,
yep.
which I would not have come to realize and to become aware of if I hadn't gone through those experiences.
Mm,
And I'm better. I've come out better from those experiences. And I think, like you said, right, that you have to go through that experience to
yeah.
come to a certain place where you have found this wonderful podcast. And I think that's what kind of keeps us going. And it brings us again one step closer to, you know,
Yeah. A sole purpose, I think.
our dharma,
Yeah.
yeah, or something that's aligned for us better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I also feel sort of that in some way or the other, what I've realized is when you actually do get into these sadhanas, and I also, to my listeners to share what they feel also is that somehow you kind of lose the attachment to a certain thing. I mean, you are still enjoying your material life, you're still spiritual, and it's integrated, you're enjoying it, but I think you'll still be okay not having it. I mean, you're not gonna lose your mind over it. Like you'll be fine. That I think that the aspect of attachment is reduced.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think attachment and the need for control.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I've always been a person who's had this I'll not say obsession, but I've wanted to control the outcome of certain actions of mine. And all these experiences have forcefully made me realize that I can't control certain outcomes.
yeah.
All I can do is I can do my best. Uh, and then I can choose whether I want to be a victim of that outcome if it doesn't go in my way,
Mm,
or I can choose to take that outcome as a learning experience and move to the next and be better the next time.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that attachment and being attached, you know, you know, separate to the outcome, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. I think the only competition there is with yourself. You're just growing and learning
yeah,
in the process and becoming better version of yourself. So yeah, that's awesome.
100%.
Yeah, awesome. I think we want to also kind of tap into sustainability and conscious living. So how do ancient Vedic principles and the philosophy of Sanathan Dharm align? I mean, we kind of touched upon it, how they align with sustainability. So what lessons, from our spiritual traditions, can guide, businesses and individuals towards, conscious and kind of regenerative future. So if you can maybe shed some light on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thank you for that question. I mean, just going back to what I had mentioned earlier on, um, it's about using these ways of life or principles uh, to further better ourselves as individuals
Mm,
uh, and the collective. And I think, you know, sorry, I'm just kind of trying to get it back into my head so we can cut that
good.
out. Yeah, it's about I think it's about being more aware.
Mm,
Uh, the biggest takeaway that I have had from my learnings, excuse me, in the Vedic way of life, is understanding that my role, for example, as an individual,
yeah.
uh, is about doing the best I can,
Mm,
and it's about being of service and a steward. So, and I think that ties in very well with knowing that I'm only here for a short period of time. What
yeah.
what can I do to make this place better than when I had come
Mm,
here? And I think if we follow certain principles, certain sadhanas, um, as individuals, if we get more into being more uh, mindful, hyper focused on our day-to-day duties,
yeah.
doing yoga, meditation, chantings. Uh, I think that'll help us as individuals just kind of
Mm,
find that space
yeah.
of, being more intentional, uh, living day to day,
Yeah.
focused, um, and in harmony, right? Like if my mind is not in harmony, how am I going to bring that
Yeah.
in
Found you. Yeah.
across my environment, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so I think it's very important, and I think uh, certain, direct examples of what we can take from, these cultures, Vedic cultures and all is um, going more local,
Mm,
So for example, in today's day and age, and I'm kind of drifting into more technical space here. You know, everything is of convenience, right? I can order something on Amazon and get it shipped from God knows where to Toronto. And it's something amazing. But if we can limit our consuming to a local space where, let's say, if I want to order something on Amazon, for example, I order something which is, made in the same continent
mhm,
instead of having it shipped from China, for example.
mhm.
That itself is a conscious decision where you're still, you know, the company that's selling it, they're still making their money, but at least your footprint is lower.
Right.
Right? You're not buying something which is coming from the other part of the world
Mhm,
because there's a lot of energy, a lot of resources that have gone into making that possible.
mm,
And those sources of energy aren't renewable or fully clean as of yet. I mean, we're getting there, but we aren't there yet, right? Shipping, planes. I mean, there's a lot that has to get
yeah.
done for those to be emission free.
Mhm,
Um, Another example that we can look at is going more seasonal. Think we've become spoiled for choice. So when it comes to different foods, people. have a certain expectation that they want fruits available, certain fruits or foods available throughout the year.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works, right? You have to work with the season, with the soil.
Mm,
A lot of the ancient cultures, they would eat certain foods only, in winters, or
yeah.
certain things in summer, or in
Mm,
spring or fall. And they would work with
with the
the
nature.
weather, the
Yeah.
environment, right?
Yeah.
And those were beneficial for us as well. So, for example, you would have certain foods which would grow well, in fall or in winter. And if you would consume them, they would actually give you natural heat in your body to
Mm,
prevent from, getting affected by the cold temperatures. And vice versa. There would be certain fruits, for example, that are available in summers which help cool your
mm,
body,
yeah.
right? So it works very well in kind of like a symbiotic relationship.
Mm,
I think that's another way of how people can become more sustainable as individuals and as a society.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and then it comes to, you know, energy and clean energy systems. And I think that's where, you know, we have individuals, but then we have to have uh companies,
Mm,
non-profits, for-profits, and governmental agencies who work hand in hand, um, and who look at, let's say, this next phase of humans, or the next evolution of humans. What is it? Is it going to be just of the AI revolution? Is it just going to be of, the industrial revolution, or the cryptocurrency revolution? What is it?
mhm,
Um, I think it's about using that ingenuity that we have in ourselves to use that to drive like clean energy systems and bring in a sustainable change, because we have the knowledge, right? As a collective,
mhm,
we have the tools, we have the technology, we have
yeah.
the convenience. So why not utilize that
Mm,
by actually bringing about um, long lasting change in how we, power our day to day and
yeah.
move through.
Yeah. So yeah, living with intention and purpose. So I
Yeah.
think just very consciously, as you act, I think is very important. Through what you've kind of described, and it definitely makes sense. Um, and yeah, and I think everyone should kind of have that kind of element, or at least work towards it. Every household.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful message. So thank you for sharing that. I think with this,
Yeah.
Saurabh, it's been in such an interesting conversation, and time has just,
Yeah.
gone by. So we
Yeah.
have come to an end of our episode, unfortunately, but it was such a pleasure talking with you today, and getting deeper into some spiritual aspects and understanding the deities on a whole, and Sanathan Dharm, and understanding what sustainability means and living consciously means. So thank you for taking us through that today. But as we, say, goodbye for now, if you have any final message that you want to give out to all our listeners and viewers of Sipping on Stories, go ahead. And if you recommend any books, your personal favorites, happy for you to recommend that as well.
Beautiful. I mean, thank you so much once again for having me. I'm very grateful and honored to be here. And I hope we can work towards having another discussion um, about the Vedanta philosophies, and maybe something just on sustainability. I think I kind of went on a long-winded response towards the end, and I spoke about governmental agencies
Oh,
and
no, I think it
corporations.
was.
Uh, but I mean, yeah, just like it's a rabbit hole, right? I think you can kind of go down into a rabbit hole and just kind of get lost uh, in the vast amount of information there. But yeah, I mean, as we wrap up here today, I think the biggest message I can share with everyone is that uh, everything is a spiritual experience. Even if you're not doing a day-to-day meditation or chanting, this entire existence of ours is a spiritual experience. And I think uh, it's about realizing that, and
Mm,
finding that space of being grateful, and just living every day with intent and knowing that the divine is flowing through you with every action or inaction. That there's divine force uh, running with you, and uh, that each of us carry the fire of Shiva and Shakti, the masculine and the feminine. Because if one of those were not there, we would not exist. This world would cease to exist. So yeah, we are whole as is with the masculine and the feminine.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much, Saurav. I think with that, thank you so much again for coming on Sipping on Stories. A little cheers to you with your nightcap.
Yes,
Thank you so much for joining again and providing your valuable wisdom on the show. And I'm very excited for this episode because, as I said, you are the first male guest on this episode. I started this podcast with an intention of having, women speakers and healers and spiritual leaders. But I feel like, as I said, wisdom knows no gender and it can come from anywhere. And that's the kind of realization that hit me halfway through my podcast. And I decided that, this needs to kind of go, expand a little bit more. So this was the intention for today's podcast episode. So
beautiful.
thank you so much for being an amazing
Beautiful.
part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Sarah, take care. You have a lovely night.
You as well.